Welcome in. It's Tuesday, January 17th, and I'm excited to be back. First things first, the support has been amazing on these shows lately. I believe on the last 5 or 6 podcasts or shows, whatever you want to call it, I believe on the last 5 or 6, we've at least had 115 views minimum on those. So you guys have been killing it. I can't thank you guys enough for that. But this morning I woke up and I had a problem. It's not with you guys though, don't worry. It is with the real life NBA GMs, because we're about a month away from the NBA trade deadline, and excluding a meaningless Noah Vonleh trade, we haven't had a trade all season. So I sat back to myself and I thought, why wait for these NBA GMs to make these trades, or at least the trades we would think they could make, when I can do it myself? I mean, I've played the game of 2K for many years, and I have a very decorated history as a virtual GM in the game of 2K. So with my decorated history as a virtual GM, I decided to put together 5 trades for you guys today. We have some news to cover first, but then we'll get into the trades. Regardless, it should be some fun, right? This is your early reminder to drop a like on the stream, on the show, whatever you want to call it. Subscribe to the channel. Obviously, we've had a lot of views lately, and that doesn't exactly line up with the amount of subscribers. So if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. Also, this is a trade episode, so let me know what you guys think down below about these trades. Are these trades going to be bogus? Are they going to be valid? Let me know down below in the comment section. Without further ado, welcome to the Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. Well, let's get into these trades. The first thing we're going to talk about is LeBron James. During this past Sunday's game against the Philadelphia 76ers, LeBron James became the second player in NBA history to reach 38,000 career points. LeBron, he's been the youngest player to reach every 1,000-point milestone, from 1,000 to 38,000. It's insane. It is insane. It is not too bad for a pass-first guy, right? But after last night's game against Houston, where he had almost a 50-point triple-double, I believe LeBron ended with 48, he now only sits 316 points away from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record, or Lou Alcindor. And when he breaks that record, he would be the all-time NBA leading scorer, which I believe that would be just regular season, because I think in regular season and playoff points, LeBron already has 44,000 and counting, so he's been amazing, right? But what's interesting to note is if LeBron James, he stays at this current pace that he's at the 29 points a game or 30 points a game, he's going to be lined up to break this record either on February 9th, which is against the Milwaukee Bucks, which, as we know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played for both the Lakers and the Bucks in his career, or on February 11th, he can break the record against the Warriors, which the Warriors have been LeBron's biggest rival throughout his career. You can't make this stuff up, man. You know, so the two of the teams that he has a lot of history with, or I guess the record has some history with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers, it'll be broken against one of those teams, right? I'm not saying that you have to love LeBron James. You know, I bring this LeTracker thing to a lot of these NBA shows. I'm not saying you have to love LeBron, but I will say this, you know, there's a lot of legends growing up when I was watching the game of basketball that I took for granted. Guys like Tim Duncan, guys like Tony Parker, or there's multiple guys, right, that I just took for granted. I'm not saying you have to love LeBron, but don't take him for granted. You know, he possibly is the greatest to ever play this game. So appreciate his greatness while it's here, because one day it won't be. Next up, with Tyrese Haliburton and the update on his injury, the Pacers. They said Tyrese Haliburton was hurt last Wednesday in a game against the New York Knicks. On Thursday, he underwent an MRI, and the team is awaiting additional opinion on those scans. But the Pacers, they said Tyrese Haliburton, he will be reevaluated in approximately 2 weeks. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. But this sucks. You know, this sucks because Tyrese is having an amazing year. Obviously, this is his first full season with the Indiana Pacers, but he's the NBA assist leader at 10.2 a game. You know, he's arguably an all-star starter this year. It's really between him and Kyrie Irving for that last guard spot. But with his injury now and how the Nets have been rolling, an injury like this might keep him out of the starter spot, or at least the running for the starter spot. But regardless, get well soon, Tyrese. It's not a serious injury, but you want to see him come back to the level of play that he was at before. Next up, another injury update we have for John Wall. The LA Clippers announced that John Wall has an abdominal strain. He will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that's all we really know as of right now. Though Wall isn't back to his old self, the Wizards' John Wall that we come to know and love for many, many years. Even though he's not to that level, he's still having a great year. He really gives this Clippers team a different dynamic, and is a big reason I still believe this Clippers team is probably going to make it out the Western Conference. As crazy as that sounds, as crazy as they've looked, right, with not a lot of time to mesh with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the court with their other stars, I still think this Clippers team is one of the deepest teams in the league, and they can make a deep playoff run. Next up is Draymond Green, probably the most interesting story of the day. Draymond Green, in a recent interview, he said that his future with the Warriors, the writing is on the wall. Draymond Green, he has a player option for next season, and that's led to speculation. That Draymond Green could possibly opt out of his contract and potentially leave the only NBA team that he's ever known in the Golden State Warriors. Right? In a recent interview after a game, I believe Draymond Green was asked about his future, and this is what Green had to say. He said, "No, quite frankly, the writing is on the wall. I understand this business. We tend to get into this mindset of someone owes you something because of what we've accomplished. You'd be an idiot to walk around feeling that way. I feel like you're just setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak. You're setting yourself up for disappointment, as opposed to saying, no, let me learn this business." To clarify that quote, basically Draymond, he's saying that he's a veteran. He knows the business side of things. The team will do what's best for the team, not necessarily what's best for the player, right? But to also clarify, Draymond did say he would love to stay with the Warriors and finish his career there, but he wouldn't be blindsided if the Warriors decided to part ways, right? The NBA All-Star teams, they're going to be finalized and announced late January, early February, as they typically are. The All-Star Game, if you're unaware, it will take place February 19th in Salt Lake City, Utah. But obviously, if you're unaware, the All-Star Weekend is always a very fun time for NBA fans. 2 days before, I believe you have the Rising Stars game, where you have the first and second year players, the best group in the league. They go head-to-head in the game, so that's always fun. But then on the second day, I believe on February 18th, you have the dunk contest and you have the three-point shootout. So those are always fun to sit around and watch, right? But for the All-Star Game that takes place on February 19th, this will be the sixth consecutive season in which the All-Star Game uses a draft format in which each conference's top vote getter, there we go, I said it right that time, but the captains, so to speak, for each conference, they'll serve as captains for each conference, and they will draft a roster of the remaining 22 All-Stars that were selected. But on this day, that is the next topic. In January 17th, we have a lot of scoring output, but nonetheless, let's get into the history of January 17th in NBA history, dating back all the way to 1961 when they didn't have color outside. The Cincinnati Royals, the 22-year-old sensation Oscar Robertson, he became the youngest player to receive the All-Star MVP honors. He had 23 points and 14 assists in the 1961 All-Star Game. So that's pretty cool. The 1992 season, Robert Parrish for the Boston Celtics, he became the 16th player in NBA history to reach the 20,000-point plateau for his career. And when we talk off the court, in 1994, the Sacramento Kings and LA Lakers had a game that was postponed due to an earthquake in Los Angeles. Also in 1994, but actually on the court this time, Patrick Ewing, he became the first New York Knicks player to reach 15,000 career points. So that was pretty cool. In 2012, in a win over Golden State, LeBron James, he became the youngest player in NBA history to record 20,000 career points as he passed Kobe Bryant on his way to do so. And in 2014, KD as a member of the OKC Thunder, he scored 54 points in a win against Golden State. So a lot of scoring on this day throughout NBA history. A couple of them coming against the Warriors, right? So I don't know what that's all about. But let's talk trades. Before we dive into the main segment of today's show, I wanted to throw some warnings out there. The first warning is that it's hard to find the right value for certain players because on the court, the organization might value this player or that player more than the average fan would, right? Mainly due to the parity in the league. I believe JJ Redick, I can't remember the quote right now, but basically he was saying that with the play-in being implemented into the league, it creates a lot of, I can't think of the word I want to use right now, but basically a lot of teams think they have a chance to be something, right? I believe in the Western Conference now, the difference between the 2 seed and the 10 seed is 2 games, right? So there's a lot of parity in the NBA. And that's what Adam Silver, when they implemented this new play-in system a couple years back, that's what they were aiming for, right? Was parity among the league. We avoid teams tanking, or obviously tanking, for top picks. So due to the parity we see in the league, it's hard to find the correct value of certain players, at least to organizations. But off the court, even the personal connections. Some of these players have been with these franchises for years and years. They've built connections with the GMs, the cities. So the personal connections is also something we don't know as fans, right? As we're speculating about trades. So some of these players might be untradeable, right? And some of the players I have in today's video, they might never be traded, ever. But we don't even know that, and I'm just going to put that to the side, and I'm going to do what most of us fans do, and we're going to put some trades together, right? Because if there's a will, there's a way, and I've played enough 2K to not find some trades around the league. I do also want to say, there are some players that could be traded at the deadline that I kind of expect to be traded at the deadline, but I just couldn't find deals for. Whether if it was the money not matching or I didn't believe the return was good enough for this player or that player or both sides. Whatever the reason was, those players are OG Anunoby for the Toronto Raptors. But I do believe, if he is to be dealt at the deadline, I do think the Raptors would get a young piece or two, as well as 2 first-round picks. OG Anunoby is a super, super talented player, very underrated, and potentially an all-star this year, especially with Andrew Wiggins getting the nod last season. But Kelly Oubre and Terry Rozier, 2 wings for the Charlotte Hornets. I tried to get those 2 out because they're both on expiring deals. They both have been rumored to be traded for some time now. But something always went wrong when I tried to make a deal work, whether if it was the money or the time or the return not being good enough. Whatever the reason was, if those 2 were to be traded in real life, I expect it to be some type of draft capital, right, to no one's surprise. I also didn't include a Lakers trade in this video because, to be honest, I believe they're staying put for the remainder of the season. I believe if they wanted to trade their 2027 and 2029 first, they would have already. They would have when Buddy Hield and Miles Turner were on the table. They would have early or in the offseason when they had other trades on the table. They would have traded them then, right? Obviously, Rob Pelinka in that front office, they don't want to make any trades for future assets. So I took the Lakers out of the question, right? Also, the Dallas Mavericks, I took them out of the question because they're just such a hard team to make a trade for, right? Dallas is kind of like who wants to go there, right? Because it's such a heliocentric offense. No player is going to look to go and play in that offense where they just sit around and wait to catch the ball from Luka. Luka's an amazing player, but that style of offense necessarily doesn't win you championships, right? So it was very hard to find a trade with Dallas, especially with their lack of pieces. So Dallas, the Lakers, Kelly Oubre, Terry Rozier, and OG Anunoby. I expect all of those guys to be included in the trade deadline, but I couldn't find a deal for them, for whatever reason it was. Now, for this first trade, you see it on your screen now. For the Knicks, they get a project in Dylan Windler. as well as a Tibbs guy in Lamar Stevens. So for the Knicks, they don't have the greatest developmental team in the NBA. That's no secret. But a change of scenery could be all it takes for a guy like Dylan Windler to evolve as an NBA player and get meaningful minutes on an NBA team, right? What we know as of now about a guy like Dylan Windler in a deal like this is that he can shoot and he can play subpar defense. But with a coach like Tom Thibodeau, maybe he can get that out of him. Maybe he can get Windler to buy in with his size to play some meaningful defense, because we also know Tibbs loves his shooters. Also, the Knicks would get Lamar Stevens in this deal, and that's a perfect match for a guy like Tom Thibodeau. Tom Thibodeau, the coach of the New York Knicks, he loves guys that hustle, and he loves guys that play scrappy defense. So Lamar Stevens, that's a perfect match. Is exactly what he's done for the Cavs so far in his career, and that's what he's going to do for the New York Knicks in this deal. But overall, Cam Reddish, they're sending him to the Cavs in this deal. He's an expiring deal who doesn't play anyway, so why not bring in two guys that can play from day one, right? And if Dylan Windler doesn't pan out the way that NBA fans think he could, sit him. He'll take Cam Reddish's spot on the bench, or he can send him down to the G League, whatever you want to do, but you're losing nothing and you're bringing in a guy like Lamar Stevens that you know can play from day one, right? But for the Cavs, they get Cam Reddish in this deal. As a Cavs fan, I wanted us to draft this man in 2019, but that didn't happen. Regardless, he is the definition of untapped potential. Out of college, many scouts saw him as a comparison to Paul George, which we know Paul George is an all-NBA type player. And whether if it was due to injury to Cam Reddish or playing time or opportunity, he hasn't had the consistent chance, to show that, right? So the Cavs, in this deal, they do lose Lamar Stevens, but for a team that needs good wing play and good scoring from the wings, I'd be willing to take on Cam Reddish for half a year to see if anything comes of it, because Lamar Stevens is a very talented player, but he practically most nights doesn't bring you much offensively. Cam Reddish is at least a threat. Teams know he can score. Bring him in, see what you have, and at the end of the day, we're not losing much, right? So I believe on both sides, the Knicks bringing in Windler, who's a project, and Lamar Stevens, who fits in perfect with the head coach and what he wants to do with NBA players. And for the Cavs, they get Cam Reddish, they get a project, so to speak, and he can come in and with opportunity, I have no doubt he can take a Cedi Osman spot, and we're going to go and compete I will say it'll just make the Cavs a bit more dangerous. I'll put it that way. The next trade here, we have Jakob Poeltl going to the Warriors, and the Warriors sending the Spurs James Wiseman and a 2027 first round pick for the Warriors. This is the dream scenario. But then reality hits. Aside from the Eric Pascal deal, which they did in 2021 for a couple seconds, the Warriors haven't made a deadline deal in the last decade. At least that's what it feels like. I know that the Warriors system isn't something that, it's very complex, right? It's not something that you can just trade for. You can't just plug and play players into. But a center like Jakob Poeltl, with time to mesh and figure out how to run this system the way the Warriors want to run it, it seems almost unfair, right? Because to me, he's an upgraded version of Andrew Bogut, who they won many championships with in the mid 2010s, right? Plus, the Warriors in this deal, they washed their hands with James Wiseman, which, if you don't know what I mean by wash your hands, it just means to get rid of him. Send him off, let him get a change of scenery, and for whatever reason, that player obviously didn't work out with your franchise, so just wash your hands with him, get him off, right? But for this deal, they washed their hands with Wiseman. Sure, they send a 2027 pick, but the Warriors still should be relevant at that time, and they also get an upgraded Andrew Bogut, in my opinion, in Jakob Poeltl, who, in my opinion, if the Warriors pull off a trade like this, they might be back to my title favorites. But for the Spurs, their developmental team, they have their toughest project yet, which is James Wiseman. But the Spurs have the best developmental team in the NBA for what seems like 20 years now, right? They seem to develop a lot of players that just come out of nowhere They're like the modern day Heat, where they just pick players off the street, train them for a little bit, and throw them in the NBA games, and they do decent. But I have no doubt that the Spurs team can find something in James Wiseman, unlock something that we haven't seen, or at least not in a while. And I mean, to be honest, James Wiseman, when we often forget, his confidence has to be shot right now. He didn't play much in high school. He didn't play much in college. And he was drafted strictly off potential at the number 2 pick. Since then, he's been up and down from the G League. The Warriors, if he is called up to the main roster, he doesn't play much. So with the Spurs team, especially with the absence of a Jakob Poeltl, James Wiseman's going to have the green light. And the Spurs team, who's a team that wants to get a Victor Wembanyama, you can allow James Wiseman to go out there and play his game, have the green light, play freely, and it's not his play is not going to result in additional wins, right? So you don't have to worry about winning too many games to be out of the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. So take a risk like this. Even if they can't find something out of James Wiseman, they get a first-round pick in return in 2027, which, depending on what happens with the Warriors, we talked about Draymond possibly being his last year. We don't know what the future holds for them with the age of their stars and their core. That 2027 pick could be valuable in the future. The third trade I have, we're mild here, right? We're mild. I believe this could happen, but it's a little spicy at the same time. The Indiana Pacers, they're sending Buddy Hield, O'Shea Brissett, Jalen Smith, and 2 seconds to the Atlanta Hawks for Justin Holiday and John Collins. The Hawks, they would get Buddy Hield, O'Shea Brissett, Jalen Smith, and 2 seconds. Even though this Hawks team has Trae Youngs and Bogdan Bogdanoviches and even DeAndre Hunter at times, which these guys are good three-point shooters, this Hawks team is the worst three-point shooting team in basketball, and they desperately need help in that. They need help and consistency in that department, right? They'd get that in Buddy Hield in this deal. Then they would get two bench pieces, which would help the much-needed depth of this Atlanta Hawks team, including a developmental big in Jalen Smith, which, in my opinion, he could run the second unit with A.J. Griffin, right? Or Onyeka, if they wanted to start A.J. Griffin with John Collins out the door. Whatever they decide to do, they get versatility in Jalen Smith. They get shooting in Buddy Hield. They get a 3-and-D guy in O'Shea Brissett, who's gritty. He's a versatile defender. Every good team needs a guy like that. And I could even see him running in the starting lineup at times, right? Having a lineup of like Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, or excuse me. You can have a lineup of Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, O'Shea Brissett, Clint Capella, right? The defense would be insane aside from Trae Young, right? But for Indy, they would create a new big three. Obviously Tyrese is out right now, but Tyrese Halliburton, when he returns, you have a new big three of Tyrese Halliburton, who is an all-star this year, John Collins, who's been close to being an all-star a couple times, and Miles Turner, one of the most underrated bigs in the entire league, one of the most underrated players, right? Excuse me. But in my opinion, this is a very safe trade for Indy. They get John Collins, who, let me say this. Indianapolis in NBA terms, or really in any terms, it's not a big market, right? It's not the LAs, the Chicagos, the Bostons, any team in Florida, right? They don't have a big market, so free agents aren't going to want to come to Indianapolis, right? So if they can grab a player like John Collins, who's on a max deal, I mean, it's a win-win for them because he wasn't going to go to Indy in free agency. So if he comes to Indy, he could flourish with a new role, a new team. We've mentioned it before a couple times on this podcast and in the past. A change of scenery could be everything for a struggling player. So we can see a side of John Collins that we haven't seen, right, in his career so far. And not to mention, with a past first point guard like Tyrese Halliburton, who is leading the league in assists. He's going to be a lob mate for Tyrese. He's going to have the green light offensively. And even if he doesn't progress defensively like we think he could, you have an elite All-NBA defender behind you in Miles Turner, who is going to hold it down, right? So I believe it's a win-win trade for Indy. If John Collins doesn't work out, his contract's not that big. They can still find a trade for him and move on, right? But worst case scenario, you're giving up Jalen Smith and 2 seconds for possibly a deep, a piece that could win you a playoff series or two, right? Especially because Indy is one of those franchises that's just okay with being okay, right? They don't necessarily care if they win a championship, but they don't necessarily want to tank because they aren't a big market. They just like the consistent flow of money from their fans. In my opinion, win-win for Indy. I believe with the Hawks, they switch things up. They get John Collins out of there. They wash their hands, and they get much-needed shooting and versatility with the 2 other bench pieces. All right, this is the 4th trade. Obviously, take it in, look at the details. But this is where trades start to heat up. This is where trades start to heat up. If Phoenix, we'll start with them. They go all in on this deal. They get a new big 3 of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Pascal Siakam, which is arguably 3 top 25 players in the NBA right now. So they go all in with a new big 3. They also get a young center in Precious Achiuwa, which they could start him, right, to be honest. Or he could come off the bench in lineups that they want to run Pascal at center. So that gives them versatility. And plus, they don't give up much at all. They're giving up Jay Crowder, who's sitting at home playing as much basketball as us fans. They give up Josh Okogie, who, sure, he's shown promise this year. He's been one of the lone bright spots on the bench of Phoenix. But he's not worth what you're getting back, right? Plain and simple. And they're also getting rid of DeAndre Ayton, who he doesn't want to be there. He tried to sign with a different team in free agency. You get to wash your hands with the whole entire DeAndre Ayton situation, right? He doesn't want to be there. Get him out and bring in a arguably top 15 player in the NBA in Pascal Siakam. Toronto, on the other hand, they reset a little bit. There's been rumors around the league, even from players, but a lot of league executives that believe the Raptors would like to blow it up. Whether if it was Fred VanVleet or Gary Trent, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Precious. They want to make some changes. And there's no better way to kick it off than to trade the top piece, which is Pascal Siakam. Right? And even though they're trading Pascal Siakam, they're getting a young promising center in return in DeAndre Ayton, who again, he gets a change of scenery. It could be everything he needs to evolve and accelerate his NBA career, right? They also get a great vet in Jay Crowder, which is needed. He would allow this team to continue to fight for a playoff spot. Let me put it that way, right? With a lineup of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, OG, Jay Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton, it would still let them play for a playoff spot. They also get another young piece who's shown flashes in Josh Okogie, which would help with the depth of this team. So in short, the Raptors get a former number 1 overall pick in DeAndre Ayton. They get 2 nice vets, which would give a lot of versatility to this Raptors team. And then get a first-round pick for next season. So not this year, but next year. And we're seeing this year with the Suns, they're having a lot of injury problems, right? With whether if it's Chris Paul or Devin Booker, Cam Johnson, whatever it is, this team is having a lot of issues. So that first-round pick could be very, very valuable. And the reason I'm giving this Raptors team a DeAndre Ayton and a number 1 pick is because of the emergence of Pascal Siakam. We're not going to act like he's not an all-NBA player this year. He is an all-NBA 13 player this year, Pascal Siakam. He's arguably a top 15 player in the NBA. So they're getting enough for what they're giving up, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. I think it's pretty even both sides. Obviously when you look at the talent on both sides, you're like, the Suns are getting the better return. But then when you add in that number 1 pick, you add in DeAndre Ayton, who could spread his wings. Let me know what you guys think about that one down below. But then our last trade. Let me know what you guys think about this one. Take it in. There's a lot going on. But let's get into it. I know, before you guys say anything, the Wizards, they're never going to trade Bradley Beal unless he asked or request a trade, right? And Bradley Beal, he's said multiple times he's never going to ask for a trade, right? And now he has a fat extension that it kicked in last season, and he also has a no-trade clause. He's the only player in the league with a no-trade clause. But the Wizards are not going anywhere again. And as talented as Bradley Beal is, he isn't good enough to anchor a contender, in my opinion. So Washington, they need to jump off the mediocrity treadmill that they're on. And I believe Bradley Beal, he deserves to play meaningful minutes somewhere on a team that is going to compete. He looked great alongside another star in the league. You know, whether if it's Luka, LeBron, Dame even, or wherever, or in Toronto. Bradley Beal, his contract is going to make any deal challenging, to say the least, but it is time to hit the reset button for Washington. It's beyond time, in my opinion. But in this deal, they do get 3 very interesting pieces, as well as 3 bona fide, unprotected first-round picks from the Miami Heat. You know, starting with Duncan Robinson, you know, back when the Heat went to the finals in 2020, the bubble, Duncan Robinson was a pivotal part of why they got there. He's a sharpshooter. Sure, he can't play defense, but maybe if he goes to a new scenery, again, the Wizards could revive his career, maybe get him to buy in defensively. We know the sharpshooter that he can be, but I mean, it's like kind of like a pick and choose, right? Where you're getting elite shooting, where he could go 7-7 from 3, but he might give up, you know, he might score 20, but he's giving up 15. So it's a give and take with Duncan Robinson. They're also getting a Nikola Jovic, former first-round pick from this season, right? It's not Jokic, it's Jovic. Let me clarify. But he just needs more time and opportunity. It's way too early to tell what type of a player Jovic can be in the NBA. I mean, I believe he was only 18 when he was drafted, or 17 when he was drafted. But he just needs the opportunity and the time to develop as a player. Wizards get another young piece and another nice young wing, right? But the most interesting piece in this deal for the Wizards is Tyler Hero. You know, some believe that he could be the main scorer on a championship level team or on a championship contender. I wouldn't go that far, but I believe he could be a great number 2 option on a championship level team, in my opinion. You know, the Wizards, they also, I mean, their franchise gets a good look out of this. They do right by Bradley Beal. They send him to a contender. They're letting him go and compete. They held on to this chapter in Wizards history for this long, but now it's time to turn the page, right? Turn the chapter, change the book. You guys get what I'm trying to say. But for the Miami Heat, you know, it seems like a lot. I know, you know, it seems like they're giving up a lot, but let's get into it, right? First things first, we have to understand that this is a Pat Riley-led team. Pat Riley loves championships, and that's what they're going to go after if they make a deal like this. You know, if they did this deal, the only rotational piece they're losing is Tyler Hero. Jovic is too young to play yet, and Duncan Robinson, he's a sharpshooter, but he plays no defense. So he doesn't play most of the times either. And if this trade works out for the Miami Heat, those first-round picks, they're probably going to be 20 through 30. They're not going to be too valuable. So you can bypass the first-round picks that you gave up in this deal, right? So the new core for the Miami Heat would be Kyle Lowry, Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. That is arguably 3 top 30 players in the NBA. Not to mention you got rotational pieces like Victor Oladipo, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, Omer Yurtseven. This team is going to be built for a deep playoff run, and it seems like a lot on surface. I understand that. But if you can get a championship out of the next 4 years of Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, that's enough for me to do the trade, right? And I believe that would be enough for Pat Riley to do the trade as well, right? And it's a very interesting trade. I know it seems very far-fetched, but I would love to see Bradley Beal on a new team, even though he has a no-trade clause, and this is probably the most unlikely deal of the video. But if I believe this is fair for both sides. You know, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Jovic, 3 very interesting pieces that could be the new core of the Miami Heat. With 3 first-round picks, if those guys don't want to be there or they want out, you have 3 bona fide first-round picks for Bradley Beal, as well as Tyler Hero, and the Heat get Bradley Beal. Maybe in this trade they get a couple seconds from the Wizards, whatever. I think this works out for both sides. But let me know what you guys think down below. In my opinion, it's beyond time to blow it up in Washington. But that's going to do it for today's show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I do want to say the support has been amazing as of late. I believe we have over 650 total views on the last 5 shows. So thank you guys for that. Shout out to you. And also, thank you for sticking with me. For some reason, I don't have a lot of... It's like I can't talk for long. I'm short-winded today. There we go. That's how I say it. So thank you for sticking with me. If I sound off today, that's why. I'm not sick. I'm just short-winded for whatever reason, right? But let me know down in the comments what you guys think about these trades. I drew these trades up by myself. Let me know if they're crazy or not. Are they valid or am I bogus for making these trades? I know some of them are far-fetched, but they're trades that I would like to see as an NBA fan, especially that Bradley Beal one. Shout out to Florida, right? I'm a Florida Gators fan. But let me know what you guys think about those down below. We're in the live chat, wherever you guys are, right? But if you enjoyed the show, drop a like on the stream, on the podcast, whatever you want to call it. Subscribe to the channel. Obviously, we're growing at a good rate right now. And 2023, if it's going to be my year, we're going to have to start taking off. So hopefully, if you're new here and you enjoy what you're listening to, go ahead and hit that big red button. Also, turn those post notifications on, as we're going to have some big news coming up. I have some big news for you guys next week regarding next month. So stay tuned for that. But turn those post notifications on so you know when these are uploaded. I will see you guys on Thursday with coverage of the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Hopefully I'm not short-winded then. This is very painful to get through this show, but thank you guys for sticking with me. But until then, until Thursday, stay happy, stay healthy. I'm out.